Well, hello and welcome. I'm Sue Britz,
And I'm Tina Lokkbakk. Welcome to Retired.
the podcast where we talk about what life is like when we put on new tread, new wheels that move us to our next adventure. Tina, I am so incredibly grateful for your friendship. And I really mean it. You know, when we first met, we became fast and true friends through our work. And then, life took its time and we spent a lot of time away from each other because our jobs changed and everything else. But we're one of those friendships where you can come right back to it and pick right back up, and it's as deep as it always is. And so I'm eternally grateful for your friendship, for reals.
I feel the same. And I think really in my teaching career, when I first met you, you brought magic in a way I had never experienced, and where I was so grateful to you and knowing you was our first trip out to Sly Park. And when we took our kids and we wore these ridiculous hats, and because we don't have to be the person in charge. So we just got to be ourselves in an environment with kids. And it was one of the best, most memorable experiences I've had. And I think that for me just solidified the friendship because it took it to another level where we were just truly just ourselves.
Yep.
So thank you. I feel the same.
This brings us to our topic, which is gratitude, Thanksgiving. Okay, so this time I am not going to pull out my history book and start
Oh my
talking.
gosh.
What?
Because I wrote down a bunch of definitions on gratitude.
Okay, so at least
So
we're on
I
the
took
same
over
page.
the job.
We're talking more about gratitude rather than Thanksgiving. This is a Thanksgiving
Yes.
episode, but I'm not going to talk about history. I mean, that would be a whole nother realm. It's like I would be talking about, how what is true about Thanksgiving and not, and what is it. But we wanted to talk about what that day brings out in regards to gratitude. So take it, go from there.
So I looked up, first, it always pops up in my searches, the Oxford definition. So very simple. It says the quality of being thankful, readiness to show appreciation and to return kindness. Merriam-Webster is often my most favorite, and it said pretty much thankfulness. And then I went to Cambridge to take it a step further because of the English. A strong feeling of appreciation to someone or something for what that person has done to help you. So those were the main definitions. Not as deep as I thought. They were kind of just,
Well, they're
fine.
not, and that's why. But that doesn't take from the feeling itself, the idea of gratitude. So, I think maybe that's part of what we were talking about today because it's true. I remember having these conversations with students before Thanksgiving, and it's like you're going to honor that day. It was absolutely part of our curriculum too, which is fifth grade U.S. history, so worked out well. But just talking about what gratitude is, and part of it I think is slowing down enough to really think about, oh, thank you. Oh, thank you for passing me the salt. I mean, you can say that. Thank you for opening the door. Thanks for running an errand for me. They're getting a little bit more deep, but you know, to take the time to feel what you're grateful about, and then the next action is that thanking of that person, whether just saying it out loud or corresponding in some way.
I think you just took it to the deep level of gratitude that I was looking for. You said the feeling. So you're right. We have these actions and we go through the motions. But I think when you take the feeling, like when you said to me today in our introduction about the appreciation, you took a moment and took the time, and I really felt it. So thanks. And I feel the same. I hope you feel it too.
I do because we keep coming back week after week and doing this thing. It's
And
amazing.
it's fun. And it's really more, yeah, it's this connection that we've like rekindled because now it's a consistent commitment to each other, and I've missed that.
Oh, see, it is nice. Now you're making me blush. Now, when we work together, it was a way to make our job easier. I mean, logistically, it makes it easier, but it also made it more fun and meaningful and deep and
Magical for me.
yeah, and that's what teachers or you're in the battle zone together, and you're if you try to weather that yourself, you can. It's going to come at a cost, but when you've got these colleagues that are just right there with you, and they are able to bring their what they bring that you don't have, and you for them, and so you got each other's back. It's very deep and very meaningful. So yes, thank you.
I learned once from someone who said, when you are in a relationship, friendship, platonic, romantic, whatever, you guys should both be shining in the spotlight together. And in fact, you should shine brighter in that spotlight. So one should not be in the audience and the other one taking over the stage. You should both be on the stage. But it's not just individual spotlights, it's one bigger spotlight. And, I was thinking, just as you were saying that, that was the difference in teaching with you was we shined brighter, each of us. Like your energy, my energy made us both even more bright. And it spread to the kids because the kids were under the spell too. Like
Yeah.
they could hardly wait to get together with your students. And we didn't have a mine and yours, we had an ours. And the kids felt the ours. And then pretty soon it was just this whole collective team. And I think that that is an area where I learned so much from you. That's the gratitude I have for what I've learned from that experience plays a
Aw.
part in my life today.
Thank you. You know, it's true. The it, that it's contagious. Gratitude is contagious, and because when it something you do something for someone again in any kind of relationship, just to a stranger or to your neighbor or with your loved one, your partner, you're that um, it's contagious. It's felt usually deeply even if it's a stranger and they hold the door open, they'll look at you like in the eye in that moment of, I see you, you see me. I mean, that's pretty damn deep for a stranger walking past you. And it just builds. It's contagious, and that's what it's meant to do. And I love, promoting kindness and gratitude. Anyone who does that, that's what they're really trying to do. Unlike others who are trying to promote ill will and hate and intolerance, like a
Or
certain,
self-centeredness.
yes, um, those are people to really steer away from. I mean, God, I can't help but thinking about, our elections and everything. This is a classic case of this. Is like, why would you run towards you know, intolerance and hate? Why we respond at the gut level to kindness, simple human kindness. Yeah.
Which is love, ultimately.
Yeah, it is. It's a type of love for sure. So tying this back to Thanksgiving, you know, I this is a cool time to reflect on Thanksgivings of the past and what I am grateful for because generally that's what I love this day. I love this holiday more than others because it's not about tangible gifts that you're giving people other than maybe you bring a dish over to their house, it's food to share, but that's part of everyday life. It's a day that makes you stop, even if you don't want to, even if you're not thinking about it, even if you're not in the mood for it, you get in the mood and to just reflect on what you're grateful for. So right now, let's reflect on some of our past Thanksgivings.
I want to step in and tell you it was a Thanksgiving that was a turning point in my life. So I always loved Thanksgiving as a kid or wanted it, but I never had it really very often because my parents are Norwegian. It's a not, a Norwegian kind of holiday. So my mom would maybe sometimes throw together like a turkey roll with like box stuffing. So I was always grateful when American families had us over and we had a traditional meal. And it was like my favorite food ever. So when I got married, had kids, the whole thing, I made it a big deal. So then it was after divorce, and I didn't have the kids on Thanksgiving because we were supposed to alternate. And I was so sad because I'd always had that as my thing, and I looked forward to it. And then there was this time, it was the best. So Maria, of course, didn't have family, and her family's Cuban, so it wasn't a big deal to her, but it was to me, and I was kind of mopey. And she's like, you know what? Let's just go up to Tahoe. So we got in the car on Thanksgiving and we drove up to Tahoe, and we went to this alpaca store out of the blue. I got this sweater, which I still love today. It reminds me of Thanksgiving. And then we went and looked around where the casinos were. We went upstairs. We thought we would eat up in one of those buffets. It was like Harrods or Harold's or whatever, Harrah's. And it was beautiful, and it had a great view at the very top, but of course we couldn't get in on the day of. So we started looking for places. And then eventually it got dark. It's time to leave. There's no place for Thanksgiving. But we stopped off on the way down at Strawberry Valley. And I'm sure you've seen it. It's like an old stone lodge that's on the 50 going up. And so they were having a Thanksgiving meal. And I think it was just for the locals. And we walk in, and it was like an old home, like mine, with a stone fireplace roaring. There were like four other families. And we got to sit by the stone
Oh,
fireplace
wow.
and have this meal. And there was this poor, worn down waitress, and you could just tell she had had a very hard life, but she was doing her very best to make it a special day with canned green beans, canned cranberry. It was the worst tasting meal I ever had, ever, because it was all from a can and store bought and bagged salad, the whole thing. And we ended up giving her this ginormous tip just to do it. And her face just lit up. It warmed us up. The whole experience was great. And I realized that was like the beginning of deeply understanding Thanksgiving. I had so much thanks for this incredible person, Maria, that I was with, so much thanks for this beautiful day. And I realized that was the beginning where I realized I could have a life, even if it didn't look the same, even if my kids weren't there with me, that I could still find joy and happiness and meaning. So that turned my whole Thanksgiving around. There's my story. How about you?
That's a pretty darn good story. Wow.
Thanks.
What came up for me from your story was that a reminder that not everyone is in that place. And when these days come around, like Thanksgiving, like birthdays or Christmas or other holidays that are impactful for people, they bring up this a lot of emotion and a lot of feeling. And um, I am grateful that I feel sadness with my dad's passing this summer, but and this is I was thinking about that today in preparation for this conversation, thinking, oh, this is gonna be the first Thanksgiving without him. And, it's like that's true physically, but I have all these memories and all the good things to remember about. I mean, I'm fortunate, my dad was fortunate to have lived, a good long life and a healthy life. So it's turn it around and be happy and grateful for it. And like just like in your story, you could have complained about the food and all that, but it wasn't. It was just turn it around and be grateful. And that's the beauty of what this holiday can be about. So even if you're lonely or sad or at wit's end, eh, reach out to people that matter to you so that you can help they can help you. I don't even know. Why am I lecturing people? That's stupid.
No, it isn't. And I think that what you're bringing up for me is I wanted to share something too. And that is we get stuck with how TV, the movies, media, marketing, what Thanksgiving is supposed to look like and be like. And I've had to learn because of divorce and how things didn't pan out as it should with 50-50 custody, that it is kind of liberating if you can open up the door to creating it in your way. So Thanksgiving doesn't mean you have to have people over and eat traditional dishes. Perhaps it is that day where you have your most favorite, let's say, fish fry or something that you really love. Like, I almost think we have to reinvent. Don't follow what it is that everyone does. If you're out having your own Thanksgiving, embrace the openness to it, of doing it differently, doing it your way, create something for you. And then it becomes less sad. I'm talking about the people, because I was alone, like the first Thanksgiving. Tough. Um, but I guess if that was the one advice I would give, is turn it into something special for you. Like, make it about appreciating the gratitude for just you, not for who's in it or who's not in it, for what you have, or but kind of maybe a celebration of life. I don't know, now I'm getting really deep, but something that resounds well in you. Make it your you day if you're alone. Don't see it as
Yeah.
something terrible.
It's tough because, we've all been in situations where we're sad or alone or, on the edge of depression or whatever it might
Yeah,
be. But depression is, full on depression is a whole different thing. And so, you've got to reach out for help for that. But coming back to our conversation about Thanksgiving itself, I was thinking, you know, uh, what you just said resonated because i- as I saw, from childhood Thanksgivings, and it was more traditional. But see, this is also back in the 60s and 70s, and that's a whole different world than it is today. Like you say,
true.
there's divorce, and I noticed that it used to be that a lot of Americans lived near to where their families were. And
Yes.
now, increasingly, families have moved to different parts of the country or world even. And that's what you've got to adapt and change. And people have adapted and changed. And so I do see myself doing that through my life. As we moved on, I was living in Spain. We still did a Thanksgiving with friends, and we pulled together a meal. Maybe it was chicken, and we always have to keep it somewhat close to the what the idea is. But chicken maybe. And then another time was when I was living in Mexico, and again, you make your own Thanksgiving, and back in those days, you couldn't make long distance phone calls, so you're on your own. It's what it is, and so whether, like you say, whether it's the turkey, and some people don't like turkey, and so you got to do
True.
something else, and but to choose the people you want to be with, the food you want to eat. I love the idea of getting around, gathering around, and eating and sharing food. It's a wonderful thing, and if it's people bring the best food, great. If that year you can't pull it together, there's nothing wrong with getting the pre-made food. It's about being together and having that moment where you share what you're grateful for. And that itself is the tradition. The tradition is taking time to make that happen.
Another thing that comes up in my mind, in fact, I was listening to the Glennon Doyle podcast. We Could Do Hard Things. And it wasn't last year, I think it was a couple of years ago. But, you know, holidays often do not bring up gratitude.
Hmm.
Holidays often bring up family drama and trauma.
Yep.
And another thing I've learned is there comes a point where you can decide who you're going to spend your time with, and create the environment that you wish to have. And I think that's one of the empowering things of getting older, is you start realizing it's not worth it to step into uncomfortable situations when you don't have to.
Right.
And I think that's another thing to think about, is you start looking at who are you grateful for and who do you want to spend this holiday with, and
Hmm.
be judicious about it. Because I got to tell you, just like you were saying, gratitude spreads, so does negativity. So when you pull in these negative Nellies
It's
and
true.
Neils into the room, they can ruin the entire day. And the thing is, we're putting our own desire not to hurt anybody's feelings so much at the forefront that we end up suffering through these holidays. And if we can find this inner strength to just hand select the people that will make it a warm and fuzzy environment, that's what we should be doing. But again, we feel this obligation. The TV shows it's a family get together. And I'm saying the older I'm getting and the more this divorce experience has taught me, and with my parents being God, family in Norway, it's kind of a liberation again to be able to hand select with whom I will spend this day.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful because the people I am spending it with are absolutely lovely.
So I think back on family memories, which gives me some pleasure. And I always enjoyed. Well, I hated the job that we were always given on a daily basis, and all the tasks and chores in our home. But well, you got to do them. We learned quickly that if you're part of a family, you got to contribute, right? But one of them was setting the table. And the exception to hating that task was on days like Thanksgiving. I remember setting the table, and it was always fun to make it look pretty. And so, your kid version may be different than your adult version. I don't go over the top version, but I love the idea of a tablecloth, cloth napkins, setting out your plates and that are colorful. Ours are colorful, and we don't have to use the china that we inherited from Uncle Al, but we could. We could take the time to pull that out if you wanted to. Um, I like those dumb crackers that you put, those popping crackers. I love those with the
No,
corn.
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
They're like crackers, like toilet paper rolls, and they've got a little. When you pull them apart, they break open with a crack with a little pop, and there's a little prize inside.
Confettis or
Hopefully not confetti. No, 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 no. Because that would make a horrible mess, and I would hate that. It would never come into
yes.
my home. But anyhow, no, it would be like the tissue paper crown that you put on, and even my dad would put on the cornball crown and enjoy the little toy. And I remember those things are so fun. So dressing up the table, having excellent stemware. I love the stemware. So you can have your sparkling as your first entree, and then you'd have your nice wine glass, that probably a Pinot Noir glass for your next tasting, which would be the Pinot Noir. So yeah, all the
Keep going, keep going.
of course there's
I'm following you
the
all
pairings that go.
through.
By the way, Pinot Noir and Champagne are the best that go with turkey and all that, because
Thank you for that.
turkey is light meat and this is a lighter wine. You don't want something that's way too heavy because you're eating heavy foods to begin with. And then, of course, a dessert wine at the end would be lovely with your
What
dessert.
do you recommend, by the way?
Any late harvest, like a late harvest Riesling would be wonderful. A Sauterne, whatever you'd like, it's delicious. But it's like, and that's the other thing is like Thanksgiving, at least in our home, growing up, and as I've moved in, through my life, it is a longer meal than your traditional American meal. And when I love that too, because it takes a long time to prepare the food and to clean it all up, but it also takes a long time to enjoy it all. And so you serve it in courses, and you sit around and you talk, and you hopefully don't just stare at each other. And that's why choosing your who's at your table is important. Um, and that to me is a winning Thanksgiving.
I remember one year where I had heard about expressing gratitude around the table by having these like pre-cut leaves, like in construction paper in orange and greens and yellows, and then everybody was to write, the things they were grateful for and put it on the wall. And I was so excited to have my kids participate, hopefully get my husband on board, and I was laughed at. And I just want to point out that I'm in this place now that the people that I would invite to my table would take this job excruciatingly seriously.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't think I would have enough leaves printed to be able to write enough of the things we're grateful for. And as you were describing that table, you're right. It should be in courses and it should take time and the conversation should be lovely. And I mean, that's what we hope for. But it sounds like that's what you've created for yourself now, too, in this new phase in life. Is that
Well,
accurate?
I would say I always like doing that because that's kinda how the food quality definitely has improved,
Yes.
uh, and, but it doesn't have to. You could, like you say, I've had a couple Thanksgiving like the one you described where it's what it is, and it's not about that, it's about being together and having that Thanksgiving moment. One of the things that I do, that I have done since as long as I can remember, is you go around the table and you say what it is you're grateful for.
Yes, that
And
too.
so, the writing it could be wonderful, but the saying it, to hear it and to see people in their eyes. And I think people, when one person starts and they're really good about what they're saying, because you invite that person,
Yes.
then the others lift their game and they really
Yes.
stop and reflect and do it. And that's the other thing is after the end of the meal, that's a good time to do that, because you've been talking all the time, and you can add in that adds into a great conversation. But um, it's like, oh, thanks for the meal. Well, let's can we talk about more about that? So if you're it's not a kid version of thanks for the meal, mom. But something else. So
So I'm going to share this friendship that I had while married. And it sounded horrible, but I loved it at the same time. And I just want to see what your reaction is. So she and her husband loved Thanksgiving. Like that was the of the year, as most of us are. And she wanted everybody to do a practice dish run. So everybody was required to bring a homemade, and it was specific, a homemade dish. And it couldn't be like canned mushroom soup on top of the green beans that are canned. Like it had to be from scratch. So she actually had a trial run where they would all whoever had planned on coming would have to bring this dish in advance and get it approved. And then that's what they would bring for the Thanksgiving meal. So it really did center around food. And it sounded awful. Like I couldn't believe that she would demand that. But on the other hand, something I realized, like in potlucks that I had done with certain people in the past, they never did anything from scratch. They never took the time. And so they would buy like store-bought potato salad after you spent days marinating the meat. So there was something to that. How does that strike you? Do you find that offensive, or do you get it?
well, I think it depends on your audience. So if everyone's game, sure, why not? I think it's a good idea. I hear you on that. It's like when we do a potluck or whatever, and everyone brings like here,
Safeway cookies?
or a bag of chips and or whatever. It's just the stuff that I can go buy that too. But when I send out invitations now to people, I do say bring an upscale appetizer, an upscale
Ooh,
whatever.
love it.
So it could be that it's bought, but it needs to be carefully curated and thought. And the idea of testing the food beforehand, that I've never heard of. That's pretty wow. That's pretty out there. But that's okay. Again, if everyone's game for it, fine. But you're certainly going to eat well then. I can only imagine though, what if somebody on that day that you're making it and you have some crisis because the oven doesn't work or the something gets burnt or whatever it is that happens. Oh, that would be horrible and embarrassing. But then if they're your real friends, everyone would laugh about it and it would be the thing that they remember
Exactly.
about you forever. Okay, so I'm coming back to how we started, thinking about the tradition of Thanksgiving and how I didn't even have a history lesson for you all. Um, but Thanksgiving, it was a time when they supposedly sat down and gave thanks to God. Um, and we haven't talked about God at all in this conversation. Um, and so from the time that history has changed over time, this has become a secularized holiday. And open to just giving thanks. And I think that's wonderful. I know there are a lot of families that do a prayer during Thanksgiving, and that's always interesting to hear, especially if it's not uh, a prepared prayer. It's one that comes from your own making. And to hear that, that's got to be a beautiful thing to hear. But I also think that, all the other thankfulness that people give um, is inclusionary, and it brings everyone into the whole thought of thankfulness uh, to the day. And that's why I think Thanksgiving is a lot of people's favorite holiday in our country, a country of immigrants and people from all over the world. You can believe whatever it is you want to believe. And ultimately, we've got to believe in this thing of thankfulness, be grateful and kind to one another. I think that's what makes this day an especially wonderful day.
I think you just summed it all up. I have nothing to add, and that is what makes it beautiful, is it doesn't matter which religion, ethnicity, cultural heritage. It's kind of something that can be found in every culture, is the desire to give thanks.
That wraps up this episode of Retired. Thanks for listening.
Until next week, please feel free to lend your feedback or ask questions by emailing us at retiredpodcastnewtred@gmail.com. You're invited to follow us on Facebook at Retired Podcast New Tread. Check the show notes for links and contact information.
Retired is co-hosted by Sue Britz and Tina Lokkbakk. It is produced, directed, and edited by me, Sue Britz. Music and graphics are by me, too. Please click to subscribe so you won't miss your chance to join our retired road trip.